Hello everyone. This is kind of a quick and dirty video that I just kind of wanted to throw together. Um, I was messing around with some of this stuff in Risk of Rain 2, more specifically some of the items and proc coefficients and all that, and noticed a lot of unused items in the game. And so I just thought I'd make like I said, a really quick video detailing some of these because I find some of them kind of interesting. First, we'll be starting off with items, and then we'll be going down to equipment. This list is by no means exhaustive. This is just like some things I find kind of interesting and cool. There are some more items that I'm not going to show in this video that just like don't work or do nothing or aren't very interesting. So I'm just mainly focusing on the ones that I personally think are pretty cool and interesting. So our first item here is called Blessings of Terra Firme. I have no idea how to say that. It's a good item to start off this list because it does absolutely nothing. Its pickup description doesn't really show anything, and it doesn't really affect any of your stats, so it does absolutely nothing. Swiftly moving on from a useless item to a very, very, very strong item. In fact, so strong that it's probably the reason why it's not in the game, is Wicked Ring. Now, this is actually an item from Risk of Rain 1, and I'm pretty sure it does the exact same thing as Risk of Rain 1. And its description reads that you gain a 5% critical chance, and critical strikes reduce all your cooldowns by 1. Now, it should go without saying how unbelievably strong that is. As you can see here, I can just use all of my abilities and they're go off cooldown like instantly. Just using my R, it's basically already back up because every single hit is reducing the cooldown by 1. So it's a very, very, very strong item, and I don't see how it could have stacked either. Like, it could have maybe increased the cooldown reduction per hit, but that would have been even more ridiculously strong, so I can see why this is removed. It's a very strong item that could break a lot of builds. Next we have Ancestral Incubator, and this is an item that I've actually known about for a while. Ever since the Sky Meadows update, this item has existed within the files, but it never really worked properly. The current grandparent boss item is just Planula, which heals you for 15 health whenever you get hit, but Ancestral Incubator was what it was supposed to be originally, and it does something completely different. Its description reads that you have a 7% chance, plus 1% per stack, on kill to summon an ancestral pod that distracts enemies. Once it fully grows, it will hatch into an allied parent with 100% health. So the cool thing about it, the ancestral pod, is that it's almost a little mini game. You kind of have to like keep it alive while the enemies are attacking it. I don't even know if it can die. And then you get a ally parent that can fight alongside you. Now the AI for this guy is kind of broken. It doesn't really see enemies too well, and when it does, it tends to miss a lot, and it only does the Grand Slam attack. It doesn't really do any teleporting or anything. It just kind of walks up slowly and slams. But it actually does a hefty amount of damage. As you can see here, I put it through a Mithrix fight, and by the end of the fight, the parent died, but Mithrix had about half health, which I attacked it a little bit at the beginning, but most of that was the parent, so it did okay amounts of damage. It just scaled its health of its damage. It's just the AI was could use some work. Next is one I found through messing around with the game, and all I really knew about it was it was called Plant on Hit. And again, it did absolutely nothing. There was no plant on hit, there's no description. I couldn't notice any changes to the character, so I was wondering maybe this is like an old Interstellar Desk plant that may be activated on hit, which would have been ridiculous, but there's no evidence to suggest for or against that, so That's what I like to believe, but there's no way of truly knowing. Now, here are some of my favorite things to come out of this. These are the strange scrap of the white, green, and red variety. As you can see from the indicator on the top left of their icons, they appear to be void items, so it's pretty safe to assume that these were corrupted versions of the regular scraps. Now the thing is, these items are just for show. They don't do anything. You can't put them in printers. They will not accept the strange scrap. There's no void printers to really test them on. However, the reason why I really like this item so much is because it makes me wonder the idea of having a void item printer. Now I understand why they didn't go with that, because half the appeal of a void item is that it's a risk versus reward when you pick it up. You kind of have to weigh your options when you go to pick one up. Do you want regular bleed or needle tick? Do you want Lost Seer's lenses, or do you want Lensmaker's glasses? You kind of have to decide between the two. Having a scrapper and a 3D printer of all those items would kind of negate that, which I think could be cool. I could understand both ideas for void items, but I don't hate how it is now, and I think it was removed because they wanted to make that risk versus reward on pickup and giving you that choice rather than just picking it up with almost no consequences and then choosing to scrap it later. Now we move on to the equipment, and a lot of these are actually fully textured and semi-working. But you wouldn't really know that from this first equipment, which is called Beyond the Limits, in which you apparently become an aspect of speed, which sounds cool. To move fast, right? Well, it doesn't do anything. No stat changes, no cool effects, just nothing. When you click the Q button, just like the other aspects, doesn't do anything. So a fully useless equipment, but it's fully textured and looks cool, and even gives you a little status indicator at the bottom left. And it's pretty safe to assume that from this equipment that there was supposed to be a speed elite type. It was removed, and I think that because it just sounds painful. Imagine all of the beetles running around at full speed. There's a mod that adds that elite aspect into the game where things can move really fast, and I could imagine that for the developers they thought it sounded just too annoying to deal with in a 3D space, so makes sense to me personally. Next up we have the Coven of Gold, which is another elite aspect, I would presume, because it tells you to become an aspect of fortune. Now this one is interesting, because in my very limited testing, I believe that it actually works. I had to spawn on a regular game because enemies that I spawned in manually did not drop gold. As you can see from this footage, any Lemurian or beetle that I killed only gave me 1 gold. But then when I picked up the Coven of Gold, the Lemurian or beetles I would kill would give me 4 gold. And then I'd move on to kill more enemies. And I got quite an amount of money from all that. So I don't know if there's any invisible factors I'm not taking into account, like time scaling or how much XP you have. I don't really think that has an effect on gold, but just stuff in that vein. I don't really know if it's that or if it's the Coven of Gold item itself, but I believe that it could be the Coven of Gold equipment. My testing was very limited, so who really knows, but from what I could see, it did increase your gold by 400%, which is pretty good. Next, we have one of my personal favorites because it actually is completely functional. It's the Elegy of Extinction, which prepares a lunar portal on use. So you just press Q and then it spawns a blue portal. You can see in the chat it says a blue orb appears. It's completely modeled and completely functional, and I'm just thinking why was this removed? I guess some people might say that it's not really that powerful of an ability just to spawn a blue portal, or other people might say that it's too powerful because you could do it with no lunar coins. And there's a third camp of people who might even say that it's just gonna loot more of the lunar item pool. Instead of getting, the good item that everyone wants, you'd get, stuff like this. For me personally, I think that this item is pretty well balanced because you would essentially spend a lunar coin to get this item, and also spawning a blue portal on every stage isn't that overpowered, I would say, because it only costs 1 lunar coin. But anyways, yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself. I don't know. I think this item could have been really cool to add into the game, and it works. If you found a way to just add this back into the pool, it would be completely functional. But for whatever reason, it was removed from the game. Now this next one is a removed equipment, but it just basically replicates in-game functionality, and that is the Affix Void, which is the aspect of Void. And it's completely functional. As you can see here, I have a safer spaces around my character, and when I attack things, I give it collapse. So in the game's code, you can become an aspect of the Void, but just not through regular means. This one's going to be super quick. Here's an item called Soul Corruptor. It does nothing. Absolutely nothing. Next we have Orbital Laser. Now this one is very interesting and also very untextured. It doesn't have a description, but whenever you press Q, you summon this, well, orbital laser from the sky. And it does actually a lot of damage. As you can see though, it was probably scrapped very early in development because it has no pickup, no name, or no real name at least. Doesn't even have working textures. So it's safe to assume that they worked on this for a little bit and then decided against it. I could see why, because it's a little weird to aim with. You have to like look at the ground directly below the enemy, and as you can see here when trying to use it on like Mithrix, it's a bit weird to aim. But this is a really cool equipment nonetheless. Next we have an equipment called Jar of Souls, which says duplicate every enemy as a ghost to fight on your side for 15 seconds. Now what does that mean by every enemy? Well, we'll never know, because again, this equipment does nothing. Press Q, does nothing. Attack enemies, does nothing. Kill enemies, does nothing. It's just there. Now we have Overloading Excavator, which fires a laser that irradiates targets for 8 seconds, causing 3 times 100% damage to nearby enemies every 8 seconds. Now again, this would be another equipment that'd be really cool to see, but unfortunately we can't because it does nothing. It's fully textured, and everything about it aesthetically is all there, just doesn't have any in-game functionality. Then we have Reaper's Remorse, which summons a ghostly revolver that doubles damage on kill. Now that double damage on kill, I don't know how to get working, or even if it does work, because I've killed things with the revolver and also killed things on my own or just anything like that, and the damage never seems to increase. So I have no idea what exactly that would mean. In terms of actually dealing damage, that functionality is still in the game. As you can see, when you press Q, it attacks enemies for 60 damage, which to my rough calculations appears to be 500% damage. Now this could be seen as a Deadbolt reference, since Reapers are a big thing with Deadbolt, but it could honestly be anything else. Maybe they're going to add some sort of like Reaper type character in the lore, but until we have evidence to prove that, I'd like to believe that it's supposed to be a Deadbolt reference. Now I had to go back and re-record this footage because I forgot to include it, but we also have an item called the Skull Token. Now the Skull Token apparently is a proof of a specific kind of kill, which has no direct effect of its own. Now it's anyone's best guess as to what this is for, or what tier this is supposed to be, since there's no outline or color associated with it. Speaking of the Deadbolt reference from earlier, the item that drops on the ground from this seems to be a huge Deadbolt reference because it looks pretty much exactly to the main character of Deadbolt. One thing I thought this could be is Desperado tokens, maybe like an early form of Desperado tokens, but in the description it says it has no direct effect of its own, which Desperado tokens certainly have a effect of their own. When I played Bandit with this item, I got a Desperado token accidentally, but even with one, I only did 79 damage. And then when I picked up the item, I still did 79 damage. So, it clearly has no effect on Bandit. So the idea I have is that maybe the Desperado tokens were supposed to show up in the item list at the top until being moved to the status indicator. But again, that line says no direct effect of its own, and also where it says a specific kind of kill, not just any kill, it's anyone's best guess. Anyways, that was just a quick list of cool items from the game, and hopefully you learned something kind of cool and interesting, or hopefully you leave with this feeling of, oh okay, that was kind of cool. Just peace out.